It was a story that had everything: fame, fortune, beauty, and a brutal, bloody double murder. It was a Shakespearean tragedy played out on live television, exposing the deep fractures of race, class, and justice in America. Captivated the world, divided a nation, and forever changed the legal system. This wasn't just a trial, it was an event. A spectacle. This is the story of Untold James Simpson, the victims Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, and the trial that became known as the trial of the century. To understand the shock of the fall, we must first understand the height of the rise. Untold James Simpson wasn't just famous. He was beloved. Born into poverty in San Francisco, he rose to become one of the greatest running backs in the history of American football. They called him the Juice. His charm was electric, his smile was magnetic. He shattered records on the field and then seamlessly transitioned into a life of celebrity off it. We see him in Hertz rental car commercials, sprinting through airports. We see him as a sportscaster, laughing and joking with colleagues. We see him in movies like the Naked Gun series, playing a bumbling, lovable fool. America adored him. He was the embodiment of the American dream. A black man who had transcended race through talent and charisma, welcomed into the living rooms of white America. And at the center of this perfect picture was a beautiful wife. Nicole Brown was a young, blonde, stunning waitress when she met OJ in 1977. He was still married to his first wife, Marguerite, but he was instantly smitten. Nicole represented a new level of acceptance, a trophy in a world he had conquered. They married in 1985. They had two beautiful children, Sydney and Justin. They lived in a sprawling mansion on Rockingham Avenue in the exclusive Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. From the outside, it was a fairy tale, but behind the gates, the dream was rotting. The Los Angeles Police Department had been called to the Rockingham address multiple times. The calls were for domestic disturbances. In 1989, on New Year's Day, it escalated dramatically. A terrified Nicole Simpson called 911. Police arrived to find a terrified Nicole Simpson hiding in the bushes outside their home. She was bruised and battered. OJ was charged with spousal abuse. He pleaded no contest. He was sentenced to community service and therapy. The press barely noticed. The image of the hero was too powerful to be tarnished by a private matter. The couple divorced in 1992, but the obsession and control didn't end. Nicole moved into a condo just minutes away. Friends would later describe OJ as a Jekyll and Hyde character, charming in public, but possessive, jealous, and terrifying in private. He would show up unannounced, peer through her windows, and fly into rages. Nicole documented it all in a diary that would later be entered into evidence. She told her friends she was scared. She believed he would eventually kill her and get away with it because he was O.J. Simpson. The stage was set. The characters were in place. The tension was simmering. All it needed was a spark. That spark would ignite on the night of June 12, 1994, at 875 South Bundy Drive. Sunday, June 12, 1994, began like any other day in Brentwood. Nicole Simpson took her mother to a dance recital for her daughter, Sydney. Later, she and the kids went to dinner at Mezzaluna, a trendy Italian restaurant where her friend, a 25-year-old waiter named Ronald Goldman, worked. Ron Goldman was young, handsome, and well-liked. He aspired to be a model and an actor. That night, Nicole realized she had left her mother's glasses at the restaurant. She called Mezzaluna, and Ron Goldman, ever the gentleman, offered to drop them off on his way home after his shift ended. At around 9:30 p.m., a neighbor's dog began to whine incessantly. The Akita, belonging to neighbors, had paws stained with blood. It was the first silent witness. Just before midnight, the horror was discovered. A neighbor walking her dog stumbled upon a scene from a nightmare. The body of a woman was lying in a pool of blood at the base of the steps leading to Nicole's condo. She was later identified as Nicole Brown Simpson. She had been nearly decapitated. A few feet away, lying in a ghastly pool of blood next to a tree and a knit cap, was the body of Ronald Goldman. He had been stabbed dozens of times. The ferocity of the attack suggested a crime of passion, of absolute rage. The LAPD was called. Detectives arrived at the scene. Among them was Detective Mark Furman. The investigation immediately turned to the ex-husband, the famous O.J. Simpson. This was standard procedure. Detectives Philip Vanatter and Tom Lang drove to Simpson's home on Rockingham. They found a white Ford Bronco parked outside, askew, with a fresh key scratch near the door handle. They rang the intercom. No answer. They noticed what appeared to be a spot of blood on the Bronco's door. The evidence seemed to be falling into place with terrifying speed. A blood trail was found leading from the Bronco into the house. Inside, detectives found a sock in Simpson's bedroom with a dark stain, later confirmed to be blood. More blood was found on the driveway and in the foyer of the house. Meanwhile, O.J. Simpson wasn't home. He had taken a late-night flight to Chicago for a business meeting. Police reached him at his hotel room in the early hours of the morning. They delivered the devastating news. His ex-wife was dead. His reaction, they noted, was not what they expected. He was calm. He didn't ask how she died. He didn't ask if the killer had been caught. He simply booked the next flight home. The net was closing. The evidence seemed overwhelming. The beloved American hero was now the prime suspect in a gruesome double homicide. The world held its breath, waiting for his return. On June 17, 1994, O.J. Simpson was supposed to surrender to the police. His lawyer, the renowned Robert Shapiro, had arranged it. Media gathered outside the precinct, but O.J. Simpson didn't show up. Instead, his friend and former teammate, Al Cowlings, called Robert Shapiro from a cell phone. Cowlings was driving O.J. in the now infamous white Ford Bronco. O.J. was in the back seat, holding a gun to his own head. He had left behind a handwritten note, read live on television by a stunned Robert Shapiro. Dramatic recreation of the note being read. Narrator reading as O.J. To whom it may concern. First, everyone understand I have nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her, always have and always will. If we had a problem, it's because I loved her so much. Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life, great friends. Please think of the real O.J. and not this lost person. It was part confession, part denial, and a farewell. The LAPD now had a fugitive on their hands. What followed was perhaps the most surreal television event in history. A police cruiser spotted the white Bronco on the I-405 freeway. Instead of a high-speed chase, it became a slow-speed procession. Cowlings drove at a leisurely 35 miles per hour, with a convoy of dozens of police cars following silently behind him. News helicopters swarmed overhead, broadcasting the entire event live to a mesmerized nation. On the ground, something bizarre happened. People gathered on overpasses, not to condemn a suspected murderer, but to cheer him on. They held signs that read, "Go O.J." and "The juice is loose." It was a public carnival surrounding a potential suicide. For those hours, the narrative began to shift from a brutal murder to a tragic spectacle of a fallen hero. For over 60 miles, the world watched. An estimated 95 million Americans tuned in, preempting the NBA Finals. It was reality TV before reality TV existed. Finally, after hours, the Bronco returned to the driveway at Rockingham. After a tense standoff, O.J. surrendered. He was taken into custody, exhausted and emotionally drained. The chase was over, but the real drama was just beginning. The trial of the century was about to commence, and the bizarre public reaction to the chase was a clear signal. This trial would not be decided on evidence alone. It would be a battle of perception, of race, and of celebrity. In one corner, the prosecution, led by seasoned veterans Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden. They represented the state of California. They were confident, armed with what they called a mountain of evidence. The blood, the gloves, the timeline, the history of abuse. It seemed like a slam dunk. In the other corner, the defense. The DNA evidence. The prosecution presented a seemingly irrefutable case. Blood matching O.J. was at the crime scene. Blood matching Nicole and Ron was in O.J.'s Bronco and on the infamous sock in his bedroom. The odds it belonged to someone else were billions to one. But Barry Scheck, a pioneer in DNA law, went on the attack. He masterfully questioned the collection and preservation techniques, suggesting evidence was contaminated, mishandled, or even tampered with. He turned a strength for the prosecution into a weakness. The timeline. The prosecution's case relied on a tight timeline of the murder happening around 10:15 p.m. The defense poked holes, suggesting it would have been impossible for O.J. to commit such a violent crime, clean up, get home, and catch his flight without being covered in blood or seen by someone. But the two most dramatic moments of the trial revolved around a glove and a detective. The prosecution believed they had a trump card. The two matched gloves. One found at Rockingham, one at Bundy. They were rare, expensive Aeroslites, bought by Nicole for O.J. Prosecutor Christopher Darden, against his better judgment, made a fateful decision. He asked O.J. Simpson to try on the gloves in front of the jury. It was a colossal gamble. If the glove fit, the trial was over. The entire courtroom leaned forward. The world watched. O.J. struggled. He tugged. He strained. The leather glove shrunk and stiffened from being soaked in blood and improperly stored. Did not fit. It was too small. Johnnie Cochran saw his opening. In his closing arguments, he would deliver the line that would define the trial. Johnnie Cochran, archival audio, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." It was a simple, powerful, rhyming mantra that reduced a complex mountain of evidence to a single, failed demonstration. The glove became the symbol of the prosecution's overreach. But the defense had a second, more powerful bomb to drop. They had evidence that Detective Mark Furman, the man who found the key glove at Rockingham, was a virulent racist. They called a witness, Laura Hart McKinney, who had taped hours of interviews with Furman for a screenplay project. On those tapes, Furman used the N-word over 40 times. He bragged about beating and framing black suspects. He spoke of a deeply racist culture within the LAPD. The defense argued that Furman found the glove at Bundy and planted its match at Rockingham to frame a famous black man he despised. When Furman was asked on the stand under oath if he had used the N-word in the past 10 years, he looked the jury in the eye and said, "No, the tapes proved he was a liar." The defense had successfully turned the case. It was no longer about O.J. Simpson and two victims. For the jury and for much of the public, it became about whether a racist police force could be trusted. The Dream Team had executed its strategy perfectly. After 134 days of trial and over 150 witnesses, the case went to the jury. They deliberated for only 4 hours. The speed was stunning. On October 3, 1995, an estimated 100 million people in America alone stopped what they were doing to watch the verdict being read. Offices, schools, and stock trading floors came to a complete standstill. The tension was palpable. In the courtroom, O.J. Simpson stood facing the jury. Marcia Clark and Chris Darden looked on nervously. The court clerk read the verdict. Clerk, archival audio, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Untold James Simpson. Case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action find the defendant, Untold James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder. The rest was drowned out. The reaction shots told the entire story. O.J. Simpson smiled, mouthed thank you to the jury, and was embraced by his lawyers. The Dream Team had won. Across the room, the families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman sat in stunned, horrified silence. Fred Goldman, Ron's father, clenched his jaw, his face a mask of utter devastation. And across America, the reaction split starkly along racial lines. In many white households, there was shock and anger. They saw a guilty man walking free on a technicality. In many black households, there was celebration and vindication. They saw a black man who had finally beaten a corrupt and racist system. It was a raw, national moment that exposed a deep and painful divide. O.J. Simpson was a free man, but he was never innocent in the court of public opinion. The civil trial that followed in 1997 found him liable for the wrongful deaths of Ron and Nicole and ordered him to pay $33.5 million to the families. A verdict that offered them a small measure of justice, but no real closure. The trial changed everything. It created the 24-hour news cycle. It made reality stars out of lawyers. It showed the power of DNA evidence and, simultaneously, how it could be undermined. It was a masterclass in legal strategy and a cautionary tale about police misconduct. But we must never forget what was at the very heart of this sprawling, sensational saga. Two people who were brutally murdered, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Their lives were cut short in a frenzy of violence. They became footnotes in the story of their alleged killer, their memories forever tied to the spectacle that followed. The trial of the century left us with more questions than answers. It showed us that truth is not always absolute, that justice is not always blind, and that in America, there are often two very different realities, forever playing out on two different channels. What do you think? Was justice served? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into America's most shocking cases. This is Veritas USA, uncovering the truth. Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Their lives were cut short in a frenzy of violence. They became footnotes in the story of their alleged killer, their memories forever tied to the spectacle that followed. The trial of the century left us with more questions than answers. It showed us that truth is not always absolute, that justice is not always blind, and that in America, there are often two very different realities, forever playing out on two different channels. What do you think? Was justice served? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into America's most shocking cases. This is Veritas USA, uncovering the truth.